What's going on YouTube? It's Tom here, and today we're doing an open tag video. I was tagged in this by Mississippi Knife Nut, and if you guys aren't already subscribed to him, go check him out. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below. He does all sorts of cool videos. This was a pretty unique idea, and I figured I'd jump on it. I've taken a little bit to get to it, so I'm really sorry about that. But here we are finally. And this is a pretty interesting one. So this is your favorite, your second favorite, and your least favorite handle material. Before we get into the video, I guess, I'm in Nick Shabazz's contest for Best New Reviewer, so if you guys are a long-time subscriber or even just a new subscriber, please go evaluate me on his channel. I'll leave a link to the Google Doc down below to evaluate me. Obviously, if you don't strongly agree with all the statements that are there, make sure you vote accordingly. I don't want this to be skewed, directly in my favor. If you guys do strongly agree with the statements that are in Nick Shabazz's little Google Doc there, I would greatly appreciate the votes and everything. So anyhow, guys, let's get straight into the video. Talking about handle materials, there's all sorts of different ones out there, and all have their pros and cons. Of the three that I have chosen today, or actually four I have chosen, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each. So let's talk about the first one up, and this may not be a surprise whatsoever, and that's titanium. So let's grab a couple knives here that are examples of titanium. I have a Spyderco Sage 2, Benchmade Anthem, and my Chris Reeve Small Sabenza. All three are great examples of titanium, and all three are great examples of the pros and cons of what titanium has to offer. So as far as the pros go, it's lightweight for being a metal. It's really lightweight. It's really nice in that regard because you can take a big knife like the Anthem here, and it's not crazy heavy. Another nice feature of it is it's versatile. So you can put all sorts of different textures or milling or internal milling to even further reduce the weight. There's just so many different possible ones. You guys can see right here, this one's just flat. This one right here has that nice chevron pattern. This one's flat again, but it has nice chamfering around the edges and everything, and even has the possibility for something like inlays. Another pro is that it is very strong, so there's no flex on it. You can squeeze pretty much as hard as you like, and you're not going to flex it. And then because of that strength, it opens up the possibility for integral knives like the Anthem here. That's not possible on some other weaker materials that we'll get into here in a bit. But because of how strong it is, we can have an integral knife like the Anthem, which is awesome. There's also a possibility for many different finishes. So this is kind of, I don't really know how to describe this finish. It's pretty much just smooth. This is also pretty smooth, but it has that chevron pattern to add some grip. You can bead blast it like Chris Reeve does. I've seen guys media blast it with different things to give it different textures. You can mill different patterns and stuff in it to give it texture. It's very versatile in that regard. You also have the possibility for a lot of customization. So you can anodize titanium to many different colors. This Sage 2 is a custom anodized knife. I have it in this nice bronze color. And even the hardware is like a matching bronze with some purple to it. So there's all sorts of different colors you can get out of it. I guess the Anthem isn't that great of a comparison because this is also a bronze, but it's almost like a shinier gold bronze, which is pretty cool. And then as you guys can see on my Sabenza, I had these pieces in the back custom anodized this blue-green. There's all sorts of different colors out there. You can get purple, green, gold, bronze, blue, pretty much you name it and it's there. So there's a lot of possibility for customization. And last but not least, on the pro side, is that it feels premium. It just feels very solid, and it feels like it deserves to be on a knife of the caliber that these three knives are on. Okay, that's enough for the pros. Let's talk about some cons here. Since it is a metal, it does get cold in cold weather. I'm being a little nitpicky here, but at the same time, I live in Ohio. It gets cold, and titanium knives like this aren't generally the most comfortable knives to be using if you're out in the cold weather. It also is kind of a softer metal. It's not hardenable. Well, it's kind of hardenable, but it's not quite as hardenable as something like steel. So it does get dinged up kind of easily. It does show wear pretty easily. These knives, obviously, I haven't dropped or anything, but they do show some wear. Let me see if I can get this to focus in the camera here. I do have a small ding right here on the very corner of my Sabenza. So, I mean, just because of how soft it is, it can show wear pretty easily. And last but not least, it can be slippery. So this isn't really an issue for the Sabenza, but for the Sage 2 and the Anthem here, they're a little bit slipperier knives. They don't have something nice like the micarta inlays here to add some texture to them. So they're a little bit slick, and if your hands are wet, that's definitely a real possibility that they might slip out of your hand. On to my second favorite handle material, and that's going to be micarta. I know a lot of people share this opinion with me that micarta is one of the better handle materials out there. We're going to bring back the Sabenza again, and I also have my Great Eastern Cutlery number 6 Pemberton. Both are my only 2 knives I have in micarta. I hope to add a lot more in the future. It just doesn't seem to be a super popular handle material at this point in time. Let's talk about the pros here. So there's many different finishes. You can have it nice and polished like this GEC has, which is nice. It's a nice smooth finish, slides in and out of your pocket very nice and easily. Or you can leave it kind of rough like the Sabenza has here. It's pretty grippy, which I like. It's not crazy grippy where it's going to tear up your pockets or anything, but it does have some nice grip to it. That brings me on to my second point here. It provides great grip even when wet. So even when micarta gets wet, it tends to get even grippier than what it normally is. That's not the case for the smoother micarta here because that doesn't really offer much grip to begin with. But on the textured micarta, as it gets wet, it becomes grippier. Another cool thing with micarta is that it changes with age. So it doesn't really, like I said, doesn't really show on this one quite as well just because of how polished it is. But on the Sabenza here, this actually used to be a much lighter, like almost like a gray. And through use, it's become a little bit more black. And through more use, it should become just straight up, just jet black over time. Which is cool. That's such a cool aspect when your knife can actually show the carry and wear that it's got on it. That's just something I really, really enjoy. It's also a very strong and stable material. Doesn't really warp. Doesn't really get dinged up too easily if you drop it. That kind of stuff. Makes for a good everyday carry handle material. And last but not least, it looks classic. So it looks just as much at home on a nice knife like a Sabenza here as it does on this traditional GEC. It just reminds you of the older days of pocket knives, which is really cool. As far as the cons go, I really couldn't think of any. The only thing I could possibly think that might be a con is there's not a whole lot of colors. There's only a certain amount of colors that are available easily. I know there's custom makers out there that make it in all sorts of different colors, but it seems to be like black, OD green, this natural micarta, white, and like maroon or burgundy tend to be the colors that you see most often. There are others out there. Now, Mississippi Knife Nut didn't do this, but I couldn't not do this. So we're going to do an honorable mention here. And my honorable mention is G10. And actually, I don't have a whole lot of knives in G10. Honestly, I don't have any. This is my dad's. Well, it was mine, and I gave it to my dad for work. And this is BJ Hill's. So, I mean, technically, I don't have any knives with G10. I just have these 2 in my possession right now. As far as the pros go, it's dense, which is great for strength, but it's reasonably lightweight for the density that it is. It's not too heavy. If the company chooses to go partial liners, it keeps the knife relatively lightweight, which is nice. There's also lots of different textures to it. These 2 kind of have a medium texture, and I think that's just because they're so worn. You guys can kind of see it, just how worn this handle material is. But something like Spyderco's G10 is very, very grippy, unlike the Paramilitary 2 and Para 3. And then if you go over to the Shaman from Spyderco again, the G10 is almost polished, almost has no texture to it at all. So there's just so many different in-betweens that you can get with G10. There's also many different colors. Spyderco is a great example of this again. They've used pretty much the entire rainbow of G10 colors. And last but not least, it's strong and stable. Doesn't warp, doesn't get dinged up super easy, but it can take some dings. I don't know if these knives have any real dings on them. Maybe right there on the end here on this HK. Now the only con I could really think of here with G10 is that it's so common. It doesn't feel special. So I mean, if you're looking at a knife that, like the Shaman, that's $200+ and it's just G10 as a handle material, it might be a deterrent from you to buy the knife. So that's the only real con that I could see with G10. Now on to my least favorite handle material, and this is going to take some explaining. My least favorite handle material is polymer. And I'm not saying polymer in general, just certain types of polymer. So let's bring a couple knives out on the table and I'll kind of explain why polymer can vary so much. So we have a Spyderco Stretch here in super blue with Spyderco's FRN. We have a Spyderco Delica here in FRN. Those are from their Seki City factory, and their polymer that they use is FRN. Then you go to the Golden factory and you get FRCP. So FRN is fiberglass reinforced nylon. FRCP is fiberglass reinforced copolymer, and there is a major difference between the two. Both feel pretty good. Spyderco does a good job of like internal bracing to make them feel more solid than they actually should, honestly. But you guys might be able to hear the difference here in just a second. FRN is quite a bit more dense. So if you tap FRN, it's decently dense, and then you tap FRCP, you can hear just more how much more higher pitched it is. It doesn't feel like quite as nice of a material, not as quite as dense of a material either. Either way, both materials, even though they're a polymer, feel pretty solid. They're not too bad for a polymer. Let's bring in another polymer handled knife, and that is a Benchmade Griptilian. This is my custom one with the blue polymer. So this is another handle material that I think feels kind of hollow. You guys might be able to hear it here. It kind of sounds like that FRCP from Spyderco. Probably close to the same material, honestly, just different texturing and different internal bracing. We're going to move on here to another knife that is in a polymer, and this is where I think polymer starts to get kind of bad. This is a Kershaw Oh So Sweet with my best ever hand sharpened edge that I'll probably never touch. This is just a case of really poor feeling polymer handles. They don't add a whole lot of texture to it. There's not a whole lot of internal bracing in it. It's just a liner lock. It just feels very, very cheap and very, I don't know, unspecial. And last but not least, this is probably the category I had the most knives of polymer. I have this Case Trapper in this orange synthetic, which is just a fancy name for plastic. This feels awful. Honestly, if I wouldn't have gotten a good deal on this knife, I probably would have never bought it. It just feels like junk compared to something like a nice bone handle or even micarta. So now that we have that out of the way, let's get into the pros and cons of polymer. So the pros is it's light. All of these knives are relatively light, not including the Case Trapper, I mean, for obvious reasons. It's cheap. It keeps the price down. I think the most expensive knife out of all of these was the Native, and that was right around $165, and that's just because it's in Maximat. This was actually really close to. This is right around $160 as well, and that's just because it's an M4 and it's a custom shop build. So other than that, I think this was right around like $115 when it came out. This is right around like $70. It keeps the price down for the steel that you're getting. That's generally, at least what Spyderco does, is they like to run some higher end steels in that FRN package so you can get a better knife at a cheaper price. Another thing is there's many different textures that can be applied to it. Spyderco uses their bidirectional texturing here on the 3 on the end. Benchmade uses some weird texturing as well. There's no texturing up front, but you do have the texturing right here in the middle, and then you also have some texturing, or technically this is even jimping, on the back and then on the bottom of the knife as well. Kershaw chooses to go with this weird, I don't even know what to call the pattern, these little half circles, and they add some jimping here in the back that's basically useless. And then Case does their standard jigging on that one. There's also many different colors of this. I know I don't have the full rainbow here, but I got some grays, some blues, the brown, the orange. Is basically any color that you can think of. They're making knives and polymer handles with that color. So if you're looking for a knife in a specific color, this handle material is probably going to be the best for you. And other than that, the last pro is that it's extremely durable. You can drop it, you can use it for ages, and it just really doesn't show a whole lot of wear, which is very, very nice for an everyday user. On to the cons, it just feels cheap. It just doesn't feel as premium as the other 3 handle materials that I mentioned. The last thing here for the cons is that, I know this is kind of specific, but there's poor threading for screws if it's done incorrectly. Spyderco does a very good job of doing this. They have these Chicago style screws on the back side, and you have your actual screws on this side that screw into the Chicago style screws, which is awesome. That's great because the screws are going directly into other steel. Now, on the other hand, Kershaw did not do this well. They have these 2 screws, or they have a similar thing going on right here, but the pocket clip was going into nothing but the polymer. And you guys can see right here, I'm actually missing 1 screw in there. It's not touching anything. And actually, I tried to super glue it in there, and it just didn't work. So that's just one other con. So I just want to thank Mississippi Knife Nut for this idea. I think this is a really unique open tag, and I'd like to tag 2 other people in this. I'm going to tag Kenny from over at In the Pocket, and I'm also going to tag Steve from the Super Steel Steve channel. I'll drop a link to both of their channels in the description below as well, and I'm going to tag them on Instagram. If you guys don't already follow me on Instagram, the link to that is also in the description. So if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like down below and subscribe to continue to see more videos just like this one. As watching, have a great day.